Get started, but thanks so much for hopping on the call tonight. Hi, Tracy. I will assign you right now. All right, folks, if you just want to introduce yourselves in the chat and where you're calling on from, we're going to set up our captioner here and then we'll get started. Hi, Candy. Hi, Alex. Hi, Diana. Hi, Anna, Lise, Kale, Andrew, Alex. All right. Sorry, y'all. Just having a little tech issue. Hi, Malcolm. Hi, Angelica. All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Just wanted to give a few seconds for everyone to hop on, and I think we're going to get started. My name is Deirdre. I use she, her pronouns. I'm calling in from Piscataway Land, and I am the campaign director at Sunrise. So this call will probably might be a little bit shorter than a lot of our big calls. It might be a little rough around the edges at times and a little unpolished. We just put it together in the last day because we wanted to, give our movement time and a space to get a little more in the weeds on the American Jobs Plan that President Biden rolled out yesterday. We wanted to talk about what it means for our work here at Sunrise and our fight for a Green New Deal and good jobs for everyone. So in terms of an agenda, we're going to hear first from Lauren, who's on our political team, who will just talk a little bit more in detail about what's in the plan, what's good, what's not good, and where it's headed next. And then after that, we'll take a little time for some Q&A. We're then going to hear from Ishaan from our Dallas hub. Our Dallas hub is doing absolutely incredible work in Texas right now, and I'm really pumped to hear about it. And then we'll close out the call hearing a little bit more from me about where the Good Jobs for All campaign is at, how yesterday's announcement and big plan fits in with the campaign, and what's happening for us over the next few months and the next few weeks. And that's it. So I am going to pass it to Lauren to get us started.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren. I use she, her pronouns. I'm also in Washington, D.C. on Piscataway land. I am Sunrise's advocacy director, which means that I basically try to translate the power of our movement to the halls of Congress. And I know there's been a lot of questions about what Biden's plan means, what's happening in Congress, and how we as a movement can engage. So just wanted to give a little bit of a recap about how I'm thinking about all of this. And then, yeah, as Deirdre mentioned, we'll have some time for Q&A as well. So to start, just want to say that this, as we all know, is a very pivotal moment, and the stakes are very high in the coming months. And the fact that Biden has made it clear that this infrastructure package will put climate at the very center is huge. And that means that we actually have the biggest opening we've ever had to win substantive action on climate change. That flat out would not have happened if it weren't for our movement and the many movements for environmental justice that have been organizing for years and in some cases decades. So this plan, not everyone read every word of it, but there's one line that really stuck out to me. It says, every dollar spent on rebuilding our infrastructure during the Biden administration will be used to prevent, reduce, and withstand the impacts of the climate crisis. So that means that trillions of dollars will be spent employing millions of people to transition our electric grid, retrofit homes, schools, and buildings, expand public transit to really kick off the decade of the Green New Deal. So it's pretty incredible. And also, at the same time, we know that this plan is not everything we want or need. Put pretty simply, it falls short of what Biden himself promised on the campaign trail in terms of the dollar amount of investments. It could go much further on jobs and housing. For example, it only right now plans to upgrade around 2 million homes out of the 140 million housing units across the country that are in desperate need of upgrades. It includes a plan for a civilian climate corps, which would create around 10 to 20,000 good jobs for people building clean energy and decarbonizing the economy. But to put it in context, when FDR rolled out a similar civilian conservation corps, it employed around 300,000 people per year. And that was back when the US population was about 40% of its current size. But luckily, this is not the final version of the bill. And this also is not going to be the only bill that Congress takes up this year. So that means that it's really our job to do everything we can to strengthen the plan Biden rolled out yesterday to make sure that it becomes law as soon as possible. A stronger version of it becomes law as soon as possible. And to make sure that this is really just one of the first of many pieces of legislation that will address the intersecting crises of our generation. So if you want to put in the chat, like how you're feeling about that. If you're ready to make sure that we make sure a stronger version of this becomes law as the first bill of the decade of the Green New Deal. So yeah, now I want to talk about a little bit like how we're going to get there. It's a big task for our movement. So in the coming weeks and months, Biden's proposal will head to Congress, where Republicans and moderate Democrats will inevitably try to water the bill down or try to stop it altogether. Meanwhile, progressives on the inside and the outside will continue pushing for our priorities to be included in the bill and for the size of the bill to be increased to actually meet the scale of the crises we face. So, like I said, we have a pretty critical role to play as the moral voice calling for action that meets the scale of the crises we're facing. And that's where the Good Jobs for All pledge comes in. So if you want to drop in the chat also, have you heard of the Good Jobs for All pledge? How do you feel about the Good Jobs for All pledge? I love the Good Jobs for All pledge. So what this pledge does is ask members of Congress to commit to doing everything in their power to pass legislation that guarantees good jobs for all invest $10 trillion over the next decade to create millions of union jobs addressing the crises of climate change, economic inequality, and systemic racism, and making sure that money is put into the hands of people and communities instead of the wealthy few. So campaigning around this pledge lets us as a movement set a high bar for Congress and actually shift the center of gravity to progressive visionary solutions in line with the Green New Deal. We decided to not include specific legislation in the pledge to actually allow us to focus on the need for a jobs guarantee and a big economic recovery, because we think that upping the ambition and the scale of jobs programs is one of the key areas where Biden and Congress need us to push them. And we also heard from a lot of hubs across the country pretty loud and clear that they thought that campaigning around jobs would be a huge opportunity for their local organizing. So at the same time of campaigning on the Good Jobs for All pledge, our team is also working with allies in Congress and other progressive organizations to make sure we're tracking big decisions that are happening in Congress, and to communicate with the movement around these key moments to help folks all across the country engage in the fights where it's most powerful for us to do so. So for instance, earlier this year, we worked with Western Massachusetts hubs and our comms team and partners to make sure that we pressured Representative Neal, who chairs the Ways and Means Committee, to scale back his plans to mean test COVID stimulus checks. And we were actually able to get him to back down through that concerted effort in a timely moment. So there's a lot more to say, but I'm gonna just stop by sharing 2 truths that I'm holding right now personally. And then we'll open it up for some questions. So like I said, this plan does not do everything we need or want. And that makes me feel really sad and scared because I know what we're up against and the crises we're facing every day. And I also know that passing this plan into law would be absolutely historic. It would lay the groundwork for winning future legislation in line with the Green New Deal and actually give us tangible programs that would create tens of thousands of good jobs to point to as the examples of what we could do under a Green New Deal. And it would materially change the lives of millions of people in the here and now and be the biggest step forward in US history to stopping the climate crisis. So yeah, I'm just gonna be really clear. We definitely do not want to fall into the trap of being Biden's pawns and closing our eyes to fight for his partial solution. I'm not here for that at all. And at the same time, this fight is far from a done deal, and we have a real responsibility as a social movement with authority and power right now to be active players in this fight. So we're going to keep pushing as a left flank in the coming months with the Good Jobs for All pledge to make really loud and clear that that is the solution we need. And we won't get everything we want, but that doesn't mean we won't give it all we've got right now. And we really mean it when we say that passing this piece of legislation into law will actually allow us to be stronger than ever as we move on to win the next pillars of the Green New Deal to come. So I think we'll have some questions in the chat here. Pass it back to you, Deirdre, I believe.
Can do. Yeah, we're going to take about 10 minutes now after Lauren gave that overview. Thank you, Lauren, to just get questions. If you have a question about the Good Jobs for All plan, you can put it in the Q&A at the bottom of your little Zoom bar there, and then we'll do our best to answer it. I see 2 questions so far. I think maybe, Lauren, if you want to read the first one, because it's a little bit longer while I take the second one, can you see them? Okay, that's okay. I see a question here from Alex that says, what kind of jobs do you think that this will inspire? What kind of jobs do you think it would create in my area? How can I imagine that for people in my community as we discuss this vision? I love this question. I think it's really exciting. I think we're still Lake in the chat saying this question is perfect. A lot of that is still to be decided. A lot of what Biden rolled out yesterday was jobs in building clean energy, but it also included a lot of jobs in the care economy. So people in healthcare, taking care of older folks, sick folks, taking care of people at home. We know that the Green New Deal has always been a huge, expansive vision of what this country and our economy could look like. And I think it's up to us and our movement to continue to, as you say in this question, Alex, imagine with our communities what the Green New Deal for that can mean for them. And yeah, get real with people about what jobs, what meaningful work and good jobs would look like wherever they live. Maybe it's cleaning up parks, maybe it's rebuilding buildings, maybe it's working in food or agriculture. It could mean a lot of different things in a lot of different places. And actually, over the next few months, we want to support hubs and leaders in the movement to have meetings and big like town halls and trainings with their community where they can imagine those things together and yeah, just get more visionary and excited about a big, bold Green New Deal. Okay, I think I'm going to see if there are any other questions in the chat. I don't think I see any. See a lot of people feeling good about good jobs in the Green New Deal. Gonna give like 10 more seconds for people to drop. Oh, thanks, Lake. Okay, Lauren, do you want to answer this question? It says, I'm confused. It's a good jobs for all thing, a pledge or legislation?
Yeah, I can take that. So Good Jobs for All pledge is a pledge. It is not officially introduced in Congress. It's actually, yeah, so we see our role through campaigning on this pledge to kind of shift what's politically possible and what's being discussed as like what's needed right now towards our vision of what we think the solutions are. So we decided to kind of go the route of campaigning on a pledge so that we could kind of set the agenda of what we need. And that does not mean that it's like mutually exclusive with supporting other pieces of legislation that really clearly align with what we're calling for through a pledge. So there will be plenty of bills that we talk about and support publicly, like the PRO Act or a Civilian Climate Corps. I know some people in the chat mentioned a clean energy standard. So there'll be plenty of things that we think are very important towards stopping the climate crisis, creating millions of good union jobs, and tackling systemic economic and racial justice. But yeah, we should definitely be like talking about and supporting those bills as they fit underneath the pledge of Good Jobs for All.
Awesome. Thanks, Lauren. Okay, I think we might have time for one more, but we're able to track all these. A lot of these questions are awesome, but they're very specific about the bills, and I'm not sure we'll be able to answer all of them tonight and right now. Let's see. Okay, Lauren, I'm going to throw you one more because I think you're ready for it. Do you see this question that says, are there any current bills that align like the PRO Act? Do you want to just speak to other bills that we're excited about right now?
Yeah. So there are bills that talk about, like how we ensure environmental justice, like the EJ for All Act, or the Environmental Equity Screening Bill that Cori Bush and Senator Markey worked on together. PRO Act, like we mentioned. There's some really strong democracy bills, and democracy is obviously foundational to any of what we're fighting for. So that's like the For the People Act or the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, some version of those words. It's HR 1 and HR 4. There's a DC statehood bill. So there's plenty of bills. And then some of the bills that we fought for last Congress that will be introduced again this Congress, like Green New Deal for public housing, the Build Green Public Transportation Act. So yeah, we'll keep you all posted as there's like very exciting bills that align with the vision of good jobs for all.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lauren. Thanks everyone for your questions. We're going to try to answer a lot of these throughout the course of the rest of the call. I am going to pass it to Sean from the Dallas Hub to share a little bit more. Sean, you with us?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Hi. Hi, everybody. My name is Ishaan. I'm so happy to be here with y'all today. I'm helping lead the Good Jobs for All campaign down here in Dallas, Texas, with the Dallas Hub. And I am new to this fight. I'm not much of an environmentalist. I am here because of my experience, which is the same experience of anybody who's lived in Dallas for the past few years. I've lived here all my life. You definitely heard about the historic winter storm Uri that hit us, what they call the Texas freeze. People with no heating in freezing sub-zero temperature. I lost all access to running water, but I'm lucky to have it now. That terrifying disaster is what it took to make the news, but this isn't really new to Dallas. In the summer of 2019, which is right before my senior year, a storm hit us and took out all the power in my community. I remember taking my laptop to work with me during the day so I could charge it in my college applications during my lunch break because I had no way to do it at home. But still, like, that was livable. I thought, like, this would be the worst of it. Then a few months later, in October of that same year, 2019, a tornado rammed through Dallas, and it rammed through my school, and our gym completely disappeared. Like, a massive gym just gone overnight and like vanished, nothing in its place. I was lucky I didn't get hit, but I remember my friend was in the shower just before the tornado happened, and a piece of his roof fell down right in front of him. He was like sending us Snapchats of it, which is like not the proper way to use your time in that scenario. And him and his family were able to make it out just before the house collapsed. None of that made national news. Like, we got literally zero attention. And that's when I realized that there are not enough people out there fighting against all this. So after the 2020 election was over, I knew that volunteering for a few months every 2 years wasn't really going to cut it. So I went to the obvious place, which to me was Sunrise. And I introduced myself on the Dallas Hub Slack. One of the coordinators, Sunny, responded within minutes, and we set up a phone call later that day. And in that phone call, he told me that we all want to fight for this like national movement, a Green New Deal. But to get that done, it takes local organizing, it takes community organizing, and you have to connect with your communities and listen to what people are saying. And that's how you build a movement. And so we do that. And a few weeks after I joined, the Texas freeze happened, and people were upset. And that was clear. I felt that anger too. And that's kind of when I decided I would fight 10 times harder. So I decided to help our hub organize for this campaign, the Good Jobs for All campaign, at a time when so many people in Dallas lost our livelihoods. It became important to all of us, I think, in Dallas. So we organized an action this past Sunday as part of the Good Jobs for All campaign, which you may have seen. It was my first action that I ever organized. It was actually the first action I've ever gone to, but don't tell anybody that. I was scared. I was definitely super scared. I was scared that people would be too busy and they just wouldn't show up. I remember I got to City Hall at 12 o'clock and people were supposed to show up by 12:45. So around like 12:35, some people were there, but I felt like it wasn't going to be enough. And I remember taking this table with my friend back to his car in the parking lot. And then we headed back to meet up with the group. And as I approached the group, kind of looking from afar, I saw this big movement in front of me with everybody wearing their black Sunrise shirt or a black t-shirt if they didn't have a Sunrise shirt. And at first we were all kind of new to each other, hadn't really met each other. But then we started to march from City Hall to the park we were going to rally in. And in that march, we walked in unison, we were singing our songs. The art was bold. And it really felt like a unified movement, even though it was full of people who were new and doing this for the first time, like me. So after that rally, I've only become more certain and am prouder that we are building a growing movement. And it's a movement of people who are getting up for the first time and saying enough. We're building public support for a Green New Deal. We're getting our Congress people to sign the Good Jobs for All pledge. And we are winning, even if they say no. So I want to ask all of you in doing that, like with him deal we need, like all over this country taking action together. Next week is an amazing opportunity for us to do that while Congress is home for recess. And we're going to make sure that when they go back to DC, they're going to have this movement on their minds. So if you don't already have a plan to join an action next week, check out this map to find an action near you. A link should be dropping in the chat. If you don't see an action in your area right now, check back in a few days. There are more hubs putting actions on the map as we speak. If there won't be an action near you, you can also join the digital day of action, which Deirdre will talk about in a few minutes. So before I pass on to her, I'm going to tell you what I wish somebody would have told me when the first storm hit or when the tornado hit, which is nobody is going to just fight for you. You have to show up. Show up. Just show up and watch this movement grow because of you. So I'm super excited to see what we all accomplish together. And now I am going to hand it off.
Thank you so much, Ishaan. Can we get some love in the chat for Ishaan, the Dallas hubs, our hubs in Texas, and hubs are all over the country who are just doing incredible work and holding incredible actions right now. That fired me up. I want to go to Texas. How can I get there? Okay. I'm going to take the next few minutes to talk a little bit more about the Good Jobs for All campaign, the fight for the Green New Deal, and how yesterday's announcement fits in. So, like Lauren said, right now, our movement has a huge opportunity to actually officially, for real, begin the decade of the Green New Deal. Like over the next few months, we can actually force Congress, Biden to pass a bill that won't be everything we need, but it can be the starting place and the beginning of many, many other pieces of legislation. It can lay the groundwork for our movement to keep fighting, to keep pushing for more ambitious bills and pieces of legislation that will guarantee millions of people across the country good jobs, fighting climate change, addressing systemic racism in this country, combating poverty, and doing the good work of making a strong, healthy, and safe society. Like that is where our movement is right now. And like Lauren said, and like we all know, the bill that Biden rolled out yesterday isn't enough. It's not everything our generation needs. It's not everything our communities need. But our movement, we always knew that the Green New Deal was going to be way more than just one bill, because the crises we're facing are just so huge. They're bigger than just one single thing. But these are the cards we've been dealt. This is where we're starting. And it's clear what our movement needs to do. We need to back up our champs in Congress, Green New Deal champions, and we need to help them make Biden, make Democrats in Congress, make leadership, put forward the most ambitious version possible of this plan. We need to put big pressure on all of our members of Congress to actually deliver and to not let, moderate Democrats like Joe Manchin or Kristen Sinema water the bill down. And we can't let the GOP just try to push the bill into some weird old process so that it dies. We can't let that happen. And then on top of all of that, we need to build really popular support for the Green New Deal, for Good Jobs for All, and for a society that works for all of us. We need to talk to our communities, talk to our neighbors and friends, get them excited about the Green New Deal. We need to talk to them about some of those other bills that people talked about in the chat that Lauren spoke to, like the PRO Act and exciting things happening in the labor movement, democracy reform, and other big progressive priorities. And if our movement does these things over the next few months, in a few months, President Biden could sign into law the American Jobs Plan. It would be a historic step, a historic day. It would be one of the biggest investments the federal government ever made in ever, and also in the past 50 years, especially to really address big economic and societal challenges facing our country. And it would be the biggest investment the government's ever made in stopping climate change. It could also just be, again, the first bill passed and really a starting place. If we pass this, we can change what's politically possible. We can give people all over the country a sense of what the Green New Deal will actually mean for them. And we can make it harder for the Republican Party, for moderate Democrats to dunk on the G&D whenever they want. And I think most importantly of all, if we do that, it'll just be a huge win for our movement. It'll be a great day. And I think it'll give us a ton of momentum that we'll need to keep fighting for more over the next few years. So that's what I'm really excited about over the next few months. Our movement's had a tough year. We're still in a pandemic. It's been hard to organize. It's been hard to gather in person. It's been hard to do actions and have meetings and do trainings. But over the next few months, some of that will start to slowly change. And there are also big opportunities for us to really grow the power of our movement. And the plan for the next few months really gets started in the streets next week on April 7th with our movement-wide day of action. So next week, members of Congress will still be home in district towards the end of congressional recess. So they're at home. And it's the last time they'll be there before they come back to DC to work on these bills before the end of Biden's first 100 days in office. And the first 100 days is a really important thing for presidents. It's this, you can usually get a sense of what presidents and administrations are actually going to prioritize based on what they do in the first 100 days. And we have a chance next week to really put pressure on members of Congress before they come back to DC to start working on this stuff before those 100 days end. So we already have over 60 actions happening all across the country. I think it might be close to 70 at this point. And it's looking like it's going to be one of Sunrise's biggest days of action ever, which is really exciting. So we'll be gathering at members of Congress's offices and calling on them to sign the Good Jobs for All pledge that Lauren talked about earlier. And this is really the first time our movement is going to take this pledge directly to members of Congress and is really going to start the next few months of this campaign. I'm really excited. And I think, thank you, JP. Thank you, Lake, putting the link in the chat. If you want to join us next week and you aren't plugged in yet, make sure you check out that link and you can join us. It's going to be really exciting. I'm going to just share a few more words about sort of what's next after the day of action. And then I think we might have time for a few more questions before we close. Okay, so action is next week. And then a few weeks after that, Biden is holding a big international climate summit. And that summit is going to coincide with that important marker at the end of his first 100 days in office. So again, at this point in time, we'll really kind of have a sense of how seriously Biden is taking our demands, how seriously he's taking our movement. If he gets through the first 100 days, if he holds this big climate summit and he hasn't laid out and backed a plan that's as big and ambitious enough, that's when we'll really know that it's time for us to turn up the heat. So after the day of action next week, we'll have a few weeks to bring people who showed up to the action into our hubs. We'll have maybe do some trainings with them, talk with them about, why they joined. And then all eyes will go to Biden, the summit, and the end of his first 100 days. Our movement will watch as things unfold. And then, depending on what happens, we'll prepare to take more escalated action in early May. And that escalated action will kick off a whole summer of us keeping our eyes on our members of Congress and making sure that they know what our movement and our generation really wants to see them do. And if we do this over the next few weeks, over the next few months, we're going to be not only building towards winning some big pieces of legislation, but we're also really going to be building our movement, building our power, and building a lot of public support for the Green New Deal and Good Jobs for All. And that's our movement's mission over the next few weeks. So I'm really excited about this. I can't wait for the April 7th day of action and the many days of action to come after it. So if you're ready and want to join us and want to help us win the first pillar of the Green New Deal this year, definitely join us for the day of action next week. And from there, together, we'll organize our friends, our neighbors, we'll build this movement. And I'm ready for us to do whatever it takes to win. I can't wait. I think that is maybe it for the call. We did end a little bit early, so I think we're going to just take a few more seconds or minutes, I should say, to take questions since we didn't get to that. So thanks, everyone. I'm going to see if there's any big questions in the Q&A or in the chat that we should answer. Oh, I don't see any new ones. Okay. All right, thanks, Lake. Okay, to what extent can we exercise our people power to advance Green New Deal and change independently of our political power? Thanks, Lake, and whoever asked that question. I think, as always, our movement needs to keep building people power and political power, especially over the next few months. We need to really build that people power, build a really strong movement so that we actually can pressure our members of Congress and other elected officials to do what we want. See a quick question. Is there a way to find this call later? This question is this call is being live streamed to a lot of our social media platforms right now. So it'll be on there for you to find. And we'll also, so you can check it out on any of our social media platforms. Okay. Awesome. Thanks, Jeanette, for signing up for the day of action. Just going to take another minute or two to see if there are any big questions. Is there an article or resource that explains why a $2 trillion plan is not enough? Thanks, Tiana. There is, and maybe someone can find it in the chat. If not, awesome. Thanks. Blake will find it and put it in the chat. Okay. I know that wasn't every question. The chat is moving kind of quickly, so I'm having trouble answering all of them. But if you have more questions, you should sign up for the day of action. If you go to the action, you can ask other sunrisers there on the ground. We're also going to, continue obviously through next week and beyond, working with our hubs and leaders all across the country to win for Jobs for All. So if you stay tuned in, however you sign up for this call, pay attention there, and there will be more ways for us to meet and scheme and organize soon. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining the call, and see you next week at the Day of Action.